All right, Sixers with the win last night. It was a wild one. It was like a 1980s game, back and forth, a lot of scoring, no defense. Kevin McCormick was there at the Wells Fargo Center for 97.3 ESPN.com. You can check out his takeaways from the game on 97.3 ESPN.com. Paul Hudrick has the grades for the Sixers win. So let's get into it now. Inside the Sixers with our Sixers insider Kevin McCormick every day at 3:20 right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin, what's going on, man?
Yo, bros, how are you?
All is well, man. What's it like being one of the 20 people in the building?
I mean, it feels pretty special, to be honest, as crazy as it sounds with how, crazy this year has been. I feel pretty honored to be one of the few people that get to see this Sixers team roll out a couple times this season.
Now, how many people would you estimate are actually in the building?
Totally, we're talking, media personnel. When you're there, it honestly, when you're walking around and the very few people that you pass by, it feels like 50 total, to be completely honest.
So, I mean, Curry hits that fifth three last night in the first quarter. I mean, is it just odd that there's no reaction?
There's a little reaction. There's still that dance crowd there, and Franklin's still there. Christian Crosby's still doing his best to get, the place rocking. But, yeah, it definitely is an interesting vibe there, especially considering with how prominent the home court advantage is because of the Philadelphia fans. Having them not be there, I've told myself multiple times when I've been down there that if fans were allowed in at this point in the season, I truly believe the Wells Fargo Center wouldn't have a roof right now.
What is the bench like? Because I can only imagine. Look, we see it on TV. Dwight Howard going crazy. Gil mentioned Seth Curry's 5 threes. I can only imagine what it's like to be in an empty building to see the bench react, because that's how you have to create your own energy these days.
Yeah, that was a big thing that Doc Rivers talked about before the season started, kind of using those guys on the bench as the real support system, because like you said, that's really all who's there right now. And honestly, the entire team from top to bottom has really embraced that. Who's on the court or who's on the bench, when something's going on, they're all on their feet. They're all cheering, whether it's Dwight Howard or, Joel Embiid when he's on the sidelines. Ben Simmons even at times got up and was cheering at points when he was on the bench. From this year to last year, it's a night and day difference of, the culture and the vibe of this team in terms of the support that they all give each other.
All right, Kevin, one of the other things this team has is a balanced scoring attack. It seems that they get 5 guys in double figures almost every single night. Well, we lost. He didn't agree with me. He said, "The hell with that."
Yeah. Are you kidding me? What a horrible take.
Isn't that how you feel, though? Like, it feels like you're getting double-digit guys every single night of the week. Like, every game you play, it's like Ben's getting 15, Joel's getting 28, Tobias is around 20. It's usually like, Green's had 15 the last couple of nights. You're getting a guy off the bench, Milton giving you like 11.
He had 19 points in 20 minutes yesterday, Shake Milton.
Oh, I forgot Curry.
Seth Curry as well. How could you forget him?
But the balanced scoring attack, I definitely think, is something that is adding to this.
Oh, without a doubt. It's like you don't need to rely fully on one guy. Of course, you do end up relying on someone. That's just the nature of basketball. But throughout the 4 quarters, it's nice to know that when you move the ball around and you swing it the way that they do, it's beautiful passing. It's resulting in any one of these guys being able to deliver.
Big time. And I think it's one of the things that hasn't been talked about as much is how balanced the attack is. That they don't. Joel gets 38 last night. It kind of gets lost in the sauce a little bit because you got Curry with 6 threes. So they got that inside-outside presence, but you also got 15 from Green. And where are those 15 coming from?
The 3-point line.
That's a huge difference. No one's giving you 15 on past rosters from beyond the 3-point line.
It's also balanced defensively. They have a lot of defenders that are willing, and that's huge.
Let's bring Kevin McCormick back inside the Sixers, 97.3 ESPN.com. So we were talking about the balanced scoring, which I don't think is getting a lot of talk, is because Joel's been so big, Curry's been so big, but this whole, they're getting 5-6 guys in double figures almost nightly.
Yeah, it's been scary. It was actually one of my takeaways from last night looking at it. So all 5 starters and Shake Milton broke double figures last night. It's the 3rd straight game that at least 6 guys have done it. and the fourth straight game that at least 5 have. So like you said, although Joel Embiid's been putting on an MVP-ish type campaign to start this year, it really has been a balanced attack, and it speaks volumes to just how dangerous this team can be when their shots are clicking. I mean, we saw last night in that fourth quarter, they put up almost 50 points in one quarter alone. It's crazy to see how Doc Rivers' system is thriving, not just for the stars, but for the entire team as a whole.
One thing that really stood out to me with Joel Embiid, not just the fourth quarter stuff, because everyone's going to talk about that 8-0 run, which don't get me wrong, it's very impressive. But I love the second quarter because he started out 0 for 6 with 1 point in the first quarter, and then I saw him in the second. What did he do? He ran the floor, he got all the way into the paint, and he was essentially an inch away from the basket demanding the ball, as if he made the statement then in the second quarter to make sure he got back on track.
Yeah, he definitely showed a lot of poise there, and just even in general, he was doing it all at that point. You know, just trying to keep himself engaged, knowing that the shots were eventually going to start to fall. We saw a lot of plays where he was breaking down transition early. We saw some chase down blocks at one point, but yeah, absolutely. After that rough start, most players would typically check out at that point. Joel, recomposed himself, understood, who he was, and this is a matchup he can dominate, and did everything he could to get himself back on track. And as we saw, managed to put up close to a 40-point performance.
Kevin McCormick covers the Sixers. Joel Embiid, I mean, the first quarter, it's like, man, this is one of those eggs. He throws 14 up the night before. It wasn't a big part of it. Then he comes back and gives you kind of an egg in the first. And then at the end of the night, 38 points. But I'll tell you what stands out to you? Forget the 38 points and all that. What about Embiid's night stood out to you the most?
Just how untouchable he was when the lights got brighter. I mean, you look at that back end of that stretch. When it came to the guts of the game and the starters came back in to really secure that victory, Joel Embiid was untouchable. Thomas Bryant was giving him his struggles in the beginning, but in the guts of that game, he could do nothing to stop Joel Embiid. He was a man determined. Every time down the floor, he wanted the ball. He wanted it in his hands, and he wanted to be the closer for the team. And he showed it at that point. Through this whole season as a whole, I mean, he's arguably been a top 5 unguardable guy in the league right now. There's yet to be a center that can match up with him one-on-one and slow him down at any point when he needs to get a basket.
We might be seeing that on Saturday, by the way, against the Nuggets. But I do want to point out one thing about his game, the free throw shooting. I feel it just goes not unnoticed. We definitely notice it, but because he does it so consistently, we just expect it, as if that's normal for a 7-footer.
It definitely is abnormal, especially when you think of back in the day with players. The whole thing has been, they were such great free throw shooters back then, and then guys now typically fall off. Everyone always talks about how LeBron isn't a great free throw shooter. So the fact that his size, it speaks volumes to the touch he has as a shooter, which is just unheard of for a guy his size who's always told to stay in the post and be around the basket. I agree. His jump shot touch as a whole is just phenomenal for a guy of his size who hasn't been playing the game that long. And it just speaks volumes to the type of talent that he can be.
Now, Kevin, over the last 3-4 years, Ben has to shoot. He has to shoot. If he doesn't shoot, get rid of him. Is that the case anymore with the way the roster is put together?
I mean, if Seth Curry can go out and rip 5 threes off in a quarter, I would say that Ben Simmons' lack of jump shooting isn't really as much as a concern as it's been in the past, especially because I would see improved fit around them. The focus of Simmons needing to shoot isn't really that drawn out, and it can't be attacked as much. We've seen it so far, just how much attention Simmons and Embiid draw when they're attacking the rim. It's just opened up the floor for their shooters, for Danny Green, Tobias Harris, Seth Curry, to just absolutely light it up from deep. So if those outside shooters can continue to make teams pay when they overcommit to Simmons and Embiid, I think it continues to lessen the handicap of Simmons' reluctance to shoot on the floor.
Now, I'm a big picture guy, and I just mentioned Embiid's free throw shooting. Ben Simmons, it's still at that 60% mark. Last night, you saw Embiid, beautiful pass out of the post, got Ben Simmons a nice bucket, but he missed the free throw with, an important part on the line that game. It didn't bite them. But big picture, will that bite them? And can you live with Ben Simmons on the floor late if he can't develop the free throw shooting?
I mean, it's still so tough to say. Although, you look at the percentage And you can say, it's not what he has done in the past. He shot something close to 60% last year. It's a little below that now. But what more stands out to me is his ability to get there. I mean, he's on pace for a career high in free throw attempts per game. So there's definitely that confidence there. And I think if he's going to show that confidence to absorb contact around the rim and get to the line, it shows that he wants to shoot them and he wants to improve. So I think it really can be there. I mean, he'll live and die with it, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's a major issue.
All right, Kevin, the team had J.J. Redick before. It's not like they've never had a shooter. I mean, but why is this team different with Curry and then I guess Green adding that than the team of the past that had J.J. Redick? And, I mean, they didn't really ever have a secondary game. It was just kind of Redick. But what makes this team so different from any of the other rosters? Now, they did have the year with Bellinelli and Ilyasova, but that was I don't think Ben and Joel were really ready to win at that stage of their career. But so why is this team different from the Redick, having J.J. Redick? But people say they had J.J. Redick. He could shoot.
I think the major thing that stands out is that Seth Curry can do everything that J.J. Redick did for the Sixers. The fact that Seth Curry can put the ball on the floor and create for himself and others makes him so much more of a threat when he's out there. I mean, we've seen it so far in the pick and roll with Embiid. They still do the dribble handoff, but the dribble handoff now is even more lethal with Redick's ability to put the ball on the floor and get to the rim as well. So I think the fact that Seth Curry can give you everything that J.J. Redick had, and as we know, J.J. Redick, his time here was a success on the floor. I mean, he had career highs in scoring. Seth Curry's doing the same. Obviously, that mold works, but the fact that you can enhance that now with Curry's ability to put the ball on the floor and adding another ball handler with that still lights-out shooting gives this offense another element.
By the way, Curry is questionable tonight, left ankle soreness. We'll have more on that tonight. Paul Hudrick will be on game night at 6:20, and he'll give you some more insight there with Josh. You mentioned dribble handoff. It's something we heard a lot when Brett was the coach. I want to get your take on offensively what Doc is doing different from what Brett did, or is this more of a product of not much, it's just he's got a different constructed roster?
I would say the roster plays a little bit of a part of it just because, the pieces fit so much better now than they did in the past, and it's a lot easier to run a system with these type of guys who complement each other so well. But I think a lot of it has to do with, you see a lot more increased movement in Doc's system than we saw in the past. There was a lot of standing around in Brett Brown's offense at times, and it caused the offense to go stagnant. And another thing that stands out is the pace. You see this team get out and transition so much more than you've seen in the past, and it's resulted for open looks for guys like Curry and Green, gives Simmons driving lanes in the open floor, same for Harris. So if I had to attribute two things, I would have to say the increased pace and just steady movement in the half court.
Earlier, you mentioned Doc Rivers' system with the second unit specifically. What have you seen at a Tyrese Maxey and Shake Milton that intrigues you a lot?
There's a lot to like about them as a combo. I love the fact that they are two top combo guards, so you can really slide them in at either spot, and you can still put them out on the floor with a guy like Ben Simmons, who we've seen at times play power forward now with Mike Scott out. But just their ability to just put their head down and get to the rim is so great to have in that second unit. Tyrese Maxey, when given the opportunity, has showed that he's going to be a piece for this team down the line. Shake Milton had another great night last night, put up 19 points off the bench. But in terms of them as a duo, I mean, they're two guys who can put the ball on the floor and create. They can play in the pick and roll. They can both knock down shots so deep. So just the fact that you have two guards together off your bench who can facilitate in small samples and show as three-level scorers gives this bench that much-needed scoring burst that it's needed in the past.
So where does this is for you, bros? Where does Korkmaz fit in when he returns? Has he kind of been seriously though? I mean, he's here because he bombs away from three. Did he kind of getting hurt kind of push him out? Was he just get disenfranchised by all my questions and just vanish?
No, I think he's there. Is he there?
I don't hear. What did you hear him say?
No, I didn't hear. I just heard. I think he thought that you were asking me specifically.
No.
Because you said this is for you, bro. So he got a little confused there. I'm like, he's there. Go ahead. Answer.
This is the Korkmaz guy. He was going to answer, but I would say him getting hurt necessarily wouldn't hurt his chances of getting back in the rotation. I think what's going to hurt the most is what Matisse Thybulle is going to do with this opportunity. If Matisse Thybulle can come out and, even come close to shooting shots consistently, even just taking the shots, the fact that at the beginning of the year in the preseason, he was pretty much a net nothing on offense, looked scared to shoot at times, looked lost in the offense, but it's coming together on that side of the ball. And we saw last night in the guts of the game, he was on the floor, stuffing Bradley Beal at the rim. So, he brings defensively. If he brings you close to what Korkmaz brings offensively, I think that might jump him in the rotation. And then when Korkmaz comes back, he is going to have to, reestablish his case of why he should be playing over a guy like Thybulle moving forward.
Should be interesting. By the way, Mike Scott out tonight as well, so that just came down a little while ago, no Mike Scott. And, Mike Scott's a guy that I think fits in pretty well with that second unit if they can get him back and going. He's a guy who can knock down, open looks. And that's the thing. This team is getting so many open looks.
Yeah, he's a great option at that stretch four. I wouldn't say great, but he definitely, the fit is there. And just when you have him in the rotation, it also allows you to stagnate the minutes of Harris and Simmons a little more at that power forward spot. We saw last night Tobias Harris played 41 minutes. This early in the season, you typically don't want to see Tobias Harris playing 41 minutes on a Wednesday night, but because of that lack of depth at power forward, you kind of have to. But Scott has been a little bit inconsistent in my eyes. I agree that the looks are there, and when he's hitting shots that he can be like that piece out there, that guy who can give you still a little bit of size in the front court and just be that spacer on the floor, for a guy like Simmons or Embiid to attack with the floor space. But I don't know. That backup stretch four spot is arguably that top priority of upgraded spots for this roster in my eyes.
I know there's no Durant tonight, so give us a little insight on what to look for against this Brooklyn team coming off. Philly's coming off the back-to-back here.
There's a couple things I'm looking at. One, I'm looking at how is the fatigue of last night going to wear on the Sixers. If you're looking at the first back-to-back that they had this season, they went and they stormed the court at Madison Square Garden, ran the Knicks out of the gym early, and then went to Cleveland and were absolutely steamrolled and looked pretty much lifeless on the court. So seeing how they respond after a grueling night last night to keep the Wizards at bay is something to watch. And, looking at that last night too, Bradley Beal dropped 60 points. Now you have to go up against a Kyrie Irving who's had a great start to the season. So how they defend him and how they counter him, because keeping him at bay is going to be a major thing to watch, because as we saw last night, one star guy going off can easily keep a team in a game. And the last thing I'm looking at is the matchup at the big position. Brooklyn is one of the few teams in the NBA right now that has two capable centers to really go toe-to-toe with, Joel Embiid and Dwight Howard and Jared Allen and DeAndre Jordan.
All right, that's tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. 7:30 is the tip. It's Sixers and Nets. And you can hear it, of course, here on 97.3. Paul Hudrick joins Josh tonight during game night with a preview at 6:20. You can get the takeaways from last night. You get the grades from last night at 97.3ESPN.com. We go inside the Sixers tomorrow at 3:20 with Paul Hudrick. Kevin McCormick, our guest today, here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Kevin, take care, pal.
Yeah, take care.
All right, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.